Okay, Year 11s, this is our second lesson on the environment. So put today's date, it might be slightly different if you've had to do this at a different time for any reason. And we're at home, and environment as usual, you can do this in your books so that you've got all your work there together, or if you would prefer to work online, that's okay. So in today's lesson, we're continuing with our vocabulary from last week of discussing environmental problems and solutions. And we're building on our knowledge of using il faut that we were using last week. But now we're going to be really giving suggestions of what we need to do and more on a personal level in the house or ourselves, rather than last week we were talking more generally of like we need to protect animals rather than things that we can personally do. We're also then going to turn those verbs into the present tense. So rather than saying it is necessary to save water, being able to say what you do. So I save water or I recycle and so on. Okay, so let's first of all start with those phrases il faut we had last week. So il faut and il ne faut pas, you have to and you shouldn't. Now these get translated in very different ways. You can also say you must, it's necessary to. It doesn't matter so much which one you've chosen to put as your English translation, as long as you have the general meaning of it's something somebody has to or needs to do and something that they shouldn't. So if we put that with a school rule, il faut être à l'heure, you could translate that as you have to be on time, you must be on time, it's necessary to be on time. Okay, and who remembers then from last week when we have pour plus protéger? So protéger means to protect the environment. What do we do when we add the pour before it? So hopefully some of you remember that it means in order to. So we're going to say today that in order to protect the environment, you have to, or in order to protect the environment, you should not, you must not, and so on. So make sure you have those phrases to hand today. So you might want to write them down again. We did them last week, but we're using them over the next few activities. So we need a few more bits of vocabulary, and just to make sure that we have remembered some of the vocabulary from last week so that we can talk in some more specifics. So things like you must recycle glass, paper, tins and that sort of thing. You must use public transport, and we're remembering words like waste, avoid. So some of these we did last week. So it's a recap, and some of it is extension. So what I'd like you to do is write these down in your books. Write the French for the ones you can remember. And then for any that you do not know or are new, see if you can find them on word reference. Because we don't know how long we're going to be in lockdown. It's important that you are getting used to using an online dictionary in case we need it for any sort of writing activities we come to, or in case we need them if you're preparing speaking things at home to say and things like that. Okay, so don't just stick them in Google because it doesn't tend to always give you the right word, and it doesn't explain sometimes if it's masculine or feminine. So wordreference.com is the best. If you can't find them, unpause and then fill in the blanks of the ones you didn't get. Okay, so let's go through these then. So to save, okay, and if you could add there energy, is économiser, and then we could put energy with it, you could put water with it, l'eau, and so on. Organic products we saw last week are les produits bio. A bath is un bain. A purchase is un achat, so purchases are des achats. Global warming is le réchauffement de la Terre or de la planète we had last week, but I wanted to also introduce you to this phrase. Sometimes they refer to it as le réchauffement climatique. Glass is le verre. Tins are les boîtes, sometimes les boîtes de conserve. Sometimes they're just called les boîtes, so just be aware you might recognise the two. If you didn't know paper, it's le papier, so it's the same spelling as French, but with an I-E-R instead of just E-R. So P-A-P-I-E-R, okay? Les transports en commun, we did in our transport topic. Gaspiller, we saw last lesson to waste. Éviter, we saw last lesson to avoid. So we're going to use some of this vocabulary now. Make sure you've got all of the correct French and English. So we're going to put together some phrases using these images of saying things that we think people should personally do. So if I was going to say you must save energy, il faut économiser l'énergie, but you mustn't use the car too much, mais il ne faut pas trop utiliser la voiture. So I'm using il faut for the things you must do, il ne faut pas, the things you mustn't do. and then they are always followed by an infinitive. So even though it's something you think somebody else should do, and maybe you're telling somebody you must save, we have the phrase here, it is necessary to, and then we have to have the infinitive coming after it. Remember, whenever you have two verbs next to each other in French, apart from the past tense, every other time it will be an infinitive. So you shouldn't ever have, if you want to say I must do something, you would never say il faut j'économise. You would have to say il faut que j'économise. It's necessary that I save. Okay, so you've got to have the infinitive after. So what I want you to do is make 4 sentences, or 4, I suppose, mini paragraphs for these images here. So how would you say you must save water? You must not waste energy. You must save energy or turn off the lights. Lights is les lumières if you want to use that phrase. You must not have a bath too much. You could use that, the trop avoir, too much, have a bath. You must have a shower because it uses less water. You must not throw rubbish in the bin. You must not waste water. You must recycle, and you must use public transport. So if there are any words that you're not sure of, again, use an online dictionary if we have not come across them in today's lesson or a past lesson, or you're just struggling to find it, okay? So if you're stuck, have a go at the first one, unpause the video and check if you got it right, and then hopefully that will help you with the next few. Okay, off you go. Let's check these then, or give you a hint for the rest. So this one would be il faut, you must, économiser l'eau, you must save, or you must to save water. And it is you must not waste energy. Okay, so it is necessary to, or it's not necessary to waste energy. Okay, so if you weren't sure, they're all going to look like that. An il faut with the tick ones, il ne faut pas with the negatives, followed by the infinitive, the whole verb. Okay, the long part. Let's check the rest if you are ready. Check with us. So the word for turn off is éteindre. So you could either say il faut éteindre la lumière, you must turn off the light, or you could say you must turn off the lights. Either is fine. Il faut éteindre les lumières, or la lumière, and you could either use and or but. You must not take a bath. Il ne faut pas prendre un bain. You could say avoir un bain. It's a bit more French to say take rather than have. So same with this. Il faut, you must take a shower, and you must not throw, we saw last week, jeter, les déchets. You might not have included tous les déchets, all your rubbish, but you must not throw rubbish à la poubelle. La poubelle is the bin. And then finally, you must not waste water. Il ne faut pas gaspiller l'eau, but you must recycle. Il faut recycler, and also use public transport. It didn't need to repeat the il faut again here, because it's part of it. You must recycle. It's necessary to recycle and also to use public transport. So check those and make a note of any new vocabulary you didn't find out, like bin or turn off. Okay, let's have a look at some of these in a listening now. So you're going to hear 4 people saying things that we must or must not do to help the environment. Sometimes they start with il faut. Sometimes they start with il ne faut pas. So just be aware of which one you are listening for. So for each person, you are writing down what they say you must do and what you must not do. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to play each one once, but I want you to then go back and re-listen if you need to. So I'll play it once and then I'll say it slower, but go back and re-listen however many times that you need to, okay? Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to play it all the way through and say them slowly in between. You repeat if you need to.
Il ne faut pas jeter tous les déchets à la poubelle. Il faut recycler le plus possible. Le papier, le verre, les boîtes, etc.
So she says, il ne faut pas jeter tous les déchets à la poubelle. Il faut recycler tout possible le verre, le papier, les boîtes, etc. Okay, so go back and repeat if you need to. So you write down what she said we must not do and then what she said we must do. Okay, numéro 2.
2. Et toi, quelle est ton opinion?
À mon avis, il faut utiliser les transports en commun ou le vélo. Il ne faut pas trop utiliser la voiture.
D'accord, merci.
Okay, so he said, à mon avis, il ne faut... Oh, sorry, he started with the il faut. So, à mon avis, il faut utiliser les transports en commun. Il ne faut pas trop utiliser la voiture. Ok, numéro 3.
3. Et qu'est-ce que tu en penses? Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour protéger l'environnement?
Il ne faut surtout pas gaspiller l'énergie. Il faut économiser l'énergie. C'est très important ça.
Okay, so she says, il faut surtout ne pas gaspiller l'énergie. Il faut économiser l'énergie. So she says, surtout, il ne faut pas gaspiller l'énergie. Il faut économiser l'énergie. C'est très important. Okay, number 4.
4. Et finalement, quelle est ton opinion? Que faut-il faire pour protéger l'environnement?
À mon avis, il faut aussi économiser l'eau. Il ne faut pas gaspiller l'eau. Par exemple, quand on se brosse les dents ou quand on prend une douche.
Okay, so he says, il faut aussi économiser l'eau. Il ne faut pas gaspiller l'eau. Par exemple, quand on prend un bain ou on prend une douche. Okay, so go back and repeat as often as you need to, and then when you're ready, come back to check your answers. So let's go through these. So number 1 said, you must not throw rubbish in the bin, and you must recycle. Number 2 said you must use public transport or a bike and not use your car too much. Number 3 said you must not waste energy. You must save energy. And number 4 said you must save water, not waste water, for example, when you have a bath or shower. Okay. So now we've looked at them as their whole verbs. So we started to see, if we flip back to here, some ways that we could give suggestions of what we think we must or mustn't do to help the environment. And you're going to do that towards the end of the lesson. You're going to write some things you think are the most important things we must do, il faut, and the things that we must not do. But we're just going to now see those verbs in the present tense. So if we were talking about saving electricity, and can you remember what éteindre les lumières means? So it means to turn off the lights. So we've got to save electricity, to turn off the lights. If I wanted to turn those into the I form, can you remember how we would do that? So I have an ER verb here and an RE verb here. So that's going to make a difference to the amount, to the endings that we're going to say. Let's have a look. If you're not sure, let's look at these examples and then we'll briefly recap the present tense. So in the present tense, you never want to have person plus whole verb, because that's going to mean I to save or I to turn off the lights. Okay, so we need to change this. We've got to get rid of the part that makes it to. We have to shorten it. Remember, our verbs are shorter in the past and in the present because our life is shorter in the past and present compared to the future. I mean, that's not the reason they change, but it's a way that can help us remember. And in the future tense, we keep the whole verb, we keep the long verb because our life is longer. So with économiser, we're going to take off the ER, and I verbs always end in E in the present tense. So it's going to be j'économise l'électricité. So instead of saying to save electricity, now I'm telling you I save electricity. For example, par exemple, and it's not pour exemple, which is what lots of you put. Par is how they say for example. So par exemple. And then this verb here, éteindre, an RE verb, we take off the RE and it's an S that we're adding. But this is slightly irregular, so it becomes j'éteins. Okay, so I turn off the lights when, and there's another verb here, I leave, an ER verb, when I leave a room. Quand je quitte une pièce. So it's a nice simple sentence that you could use in yours to say something you do to help the environment. So in the conversation booklet, one of the questions is, what do you do to help the environment? That would be a nice straightforward answer. I save electricity, for example, I turn off lights when I leave a room. Let's have a look at a couple of others. So to save water, we know now how to turn to save into I save. So what would be I save water? J'économise. And when we want to say we, he or she, the endings are exactly the same. So if in your house you wanted to say we save water, the easiest way to remember it, rather than doing the new way of we, would be on, because it's exactly the same as the I form. On économise l'eau, we save water, for example. Now what they say is we close the tap. They never say we turn off the tap. They say we close, on ferme, that's another ER verb, the tap when we wash, quand on se lave. Let's see another example. So this time we're doing save. Any ideas what l'essence is? If to do with talking about cars and using a bus. So it means to save petrol and then use the bus. So we could say something like, I save petrol, for example, I use the bus. Okay. So just quickly then, recapping the present tense, tell me in your own words, don't need to write it down, just sort of say it, or if you write it down if you want, how do you form the present tense and which endings are you familiar with without needing to look right now? So pause the video and take the time you need. Okay, so hopefully you can tell me that at least you take the infinitive and you take off the last two letters. We never put the person with the infinitive. Hopefully everybody knows that. And that ER verbs have that E ending, so you've just been reminded. But remember, you are, especially higher tier, going to need to be familiar with this and these endings. And in foundation tier, know what the I verbs end in, so that you are familiar with writing those. So what I want you to do is have a go now at turning to save. We'll just practice an ER verb. You're going to conjugate that verb into all its forms. So I want you to write down the French for I save, you save, he or she saves, we save, you plural save, they save. So pause the video and write down the different spellings that save would have for each person. Okay, so we should have, if you're ready now to check that, j'économise with the E. And the next ending is going to be the ES, tu économises, you save, he or she saves, we save, you save, they save. Okay. All of these ones are pronounced the same. J'économise, tu économises, il économise, elle économise, because the end here is silent. So if in an exam, in the speaking exam, you've forgotten the endings, you could at least do these for people with any ER verbs, because the ending sounds the same. Okay. So let's have a look now at some in the I forming context. You've got 6 sentences here, people all saying something they do. What I want you to decide is for each one, is it good, is it bon, or is it mauvais pour l'environnement? So person 1 says, si je mange, or person A, si je mange un pizza, je recycle la boîte en carton. So you need to decide what that means and then write down in your book, number 1, bon or mauvais. Okay, and we'll go through those then when you're ready to unpause. Okay, so let's check those. So number 1 was bon, because it means if I eat a pizza, I recycle the box or the cardboard box. The boîte en carton means the box of card. Okay, so the cardboard box. Number 2 is bad because I throw newspapers and bottles in the bin. And vide means empty. See, but even if you didn't know vide, then you can get that that is bad. Okay. And remember, a journal means newspaper, because newspapers tend to come out daily, and jour means day. So I throw the dailies. Okay. Number 3 is good, because when I quit, looks like when I leave a room, I turn off the light. So we had pièce in our last activity. Bon, for the next one as well, I go. So this is an irregular verb. Remember, we don't say j'all when we're turning aller into the present tense. It's completely irregular. I go to the town centre on foot. There's an accent being chopped off there. I don't take a shower, sorry. I take a bath. That's bad because it uses more water. Although I suppose it depends how long you shower for. And then finally, the last one is good. If I'm cold, and remember they don't say je suis froid, they don't say I am cold. So if I have cold, I put on a jumper instead of increasing the central heating. Now that would be the only one that you might have not recognised most of the vocabulary there. Hopefully you would have gotten the part about being cold. And then we have done jumé when we did talk about uniform, but that was a long, long time ago. So that's probably possibly been forgotten. A pull we know is a jumper, like pullover. So cold jumper. So hopefully you could guess what I'm saying. If they're cold, they put a jumper on, rather than something about heat and central. So you might be able to guess this was central heating. Okay. So let's have a go now at making some of our own sentences like this by using the present tense to turn our infinitives into the I form. So you're all going to have a go at making 6 I sentences. Some of you might feel comfortable then to use the we form. So I've just put the I endings up here. We have got some ER verbs and RE verbs, one IR verb, but this is irregular, remember. Okay, we don't say j'avoir when we say I have, so be careful. So you're going to work out which one of these is the infinitive for I take. Then you're going to put the I and then turn take into the present tense by taking off the last 2 letters and adding the right ending. The parts that come after then, public transport, organic products, the light and so on, is either vocabulary we've done today or last lesson, or I've put them muddled up in here if it's a new thing, but a lot of them have a cognate in them, so we'll see how many you can complete. Okay, so if you want to first of all do the first one and check that you've got your ending correct on I take, and you haven't written I to take, then write the first of all in French. If you want to write the English with them as well, so you have them for revision, then that's a great idea, or you can take a screenshot of this or something. Okay, so write number 1 and then check to see if you're on the right lines with the answers. Okay, so correct in a different colour then. So I forgot, I was going to say that if you want then a bit of extra help, I've now given you the English for what these infinitives are. So if that's what you were struggling on, pause again, and I've now given you the English for the infinitives to have a go. Okay. So let's check number 1. I take public transport or walk. So we take prendre, to take. We take off the last 2 letters, and it's an RE verb. So I've got to add an S. We're not adding an E because it's not an ER verb. It's an RE verb. So je prends le transport en commun, ou je marche. So we have marcher, to walk, is an ER verb. So if you've only done number 1, go back now and try the others with the vocabulary. Rewind the video a little to the other screen. Otherwise, if you have had a go at more, then carry on checking. So acheter is the verb to buy. So we want to make it j'achète, I buy, les produits bio. Éteindre was a bit irregular. We do take off the RE and add an S because it's an RE verb, but we also take off the D. J'éteins la lumière. I always throw litter in the bin. Je jette les déchets à la poubelle. And then the toujours would go here. So je toujours jette les déchets à la poubelle. I lower the heating. Je baisse. You could either use the central heating, le chauffage central, or if you forgot that, you could simply say le température in an exam. I have, hopefully we know now, is j'ai. Les lampes à basse consommation was one of our vocabulary bits in the box. Lamps at low energy. In other words, low energy bulbs. Okay. So check yours and correct in a different colour, and then let's have a look at the we sentences. So we have is irregular. We say nous avons or on a, depending on which we you've used. Des panneaux solaires, on est sur. Le toit from our box is the word for the roof. We never use plastic bags, so we need to make sure we know first of all we use. So utiliser is to use, so I'm going to say on. Utilise, take off the ER and add an E. And then I need to make it never, so we put ne jamais either side of the verb. So on n'utilise jamais. Or if you use the nous form, nous n'utilisons, ONS, jamais, les sacs en plastique. So trier is to sort, so it's either on tri or nous trions, ONS instead of E, les déchets. And on utilise again, same verb as there, or nous utilisons. L'essence sans plomb is literally petrol without lead, unleaded petrol. Right, so before you have a go at writing some of your own, we're just going to take a little break into looking at some general environment vocabulary to recap a bit of last week, and also just make sure we're building on our knowledge of recognising environment words or working them out from context. So you've got 6 very short little readings here, but then the questions are in French. What you need to do, it says relier les expressions suivantes avec les titres. So these are the titres, the titles of the pictures, as if they were newspaper articles. And then down the side here are some phrases, some expressions that might go with each. You have to relier, means link up the correct phrases with the right newspaper article. There's obviously only 6 of these, so we can use some more than once. So you have an example here, une source d'énergie inépuisable. Now you wouldn't have known inépuisable, it means inexhaustible, but if I was looking at une source d'énergie, an energy source, well, the only one here that's talking about an energy source or that has a picture to do with an energy source would be D, without really even needing to look at the actual words in the titles, okay? So what I want you to do is have a go. So you have a look at this, nettoyer la plage. What's the verb about here? What is going on in this? And then match it up to, if the image doesn't fully help you, then have a little look at what they're saying. For example, here, Projet National de Replantation des Forêts. That's nice and clear. They're all cognates there. So see how many of these you can match up phrases that were found in these different newspaper articles. So all you need to do in your work is write 1 to 11 and then put the letter. When you're ready, unpause the video and check them in a different colour. Okay, so nettoyer la plage. I can see the word beach there. If you've forgotten nettoyer, there's a couple that might be to do with the beach. This is talking about whales. Now whales don't tend to be at the beach. We've got water here and there's rubbish in there. And then this one here, you've got people, it looks like it could be sand here and a big black thing. So think about what might happen at a beach if there was a big black area, okay? It would be an oil slick. So that is what a marée noire is. It's an oil slick. So you might have put F there because it means to clean, nettoyer, but we're not talking about cleaning water. That's why it's neither of these. We're cleaning the beach. La déforestation is nice and clear. They're doing this to combat deforestation. Now, une station d'épuration. This is a tricky one. This is where you have to learn important exam skills of come across a word. Can I see within that word anything I might recognise to make things a little easier? So I can see here the word pure. So that might give me a clue because it looks a bit like pure. And then over here, they're talking about your water, a cocktail of pollutants. So are they saying that our water is basically full of pollution or like pollutants, and therefore do we need a place where they're purifying it? That was a very tricky one. So well done if you managed to spot the pure part, or maybe you just made a random guess. Okay, le risque d'extinction, nice and clear there. We're talking about animals, aren't we? And this is talking about whales. So it's that one there. Whales are always threatened by disparition, disappearing. Renewable resources, we can see that those look a lot like the English. The renewable resource there is D, solar energy. Contamination of oceans, that one's nice and clear. Well, this is the one that's dirtying the oceans. Déverser des déchets radioactifs, so talking about radioactive waste here, okay? And that it's often poured into the sea. So déverser is poured in. L'eau potable, talking about drinking water. We've come across the word potable only once or twice before, but this is something we now need to be familiar with when we come into the social issues topic of famine. So that one was a bit trickier too. Drinking water. L'écosystème forestier, I can see the word forest there, so a forest ecosystem. Être massacré, so something was massacred. What's the most likely thing there? That's B. And then finally, destruction of the marine ecosystem. Well, that would be A, because you're killing off a lot of animals in the end, affecting the life cycle there, okay? So a few of those were quite tricky, so well done if you've got at least half, excellent if you've got 2/3 or so of them. So, I'm just going to jump on through this bit because it's part of the other bit. So what we're now going to do is put everything together from everything we did before that, for you to now talk about what you do for the environment and what you think we should do, okay? So you had this question here, que fais-tu? What do you? In other words, what do you do for the environment? Okay. What I would like you to do is say at least 3 things you do and 1 thing that you don't do. Try and talk about what other people do. So, for example, change the question and explain about this quiz part in a second. You can use to help you write your answer, but you can change the person. Include some time phrases. Is it that you always recycle? Is it that you sometimes take a bath? Do you never turn off the lights? So remember, we've done lots of other negatives, like I never do, I hardly ever, I no longer, ne plus. See if you can use those, okay? Try and add in another tense. So you might say something like, I never turn off the light, but in the future, I am going to turn off the light when I leave a room, or something like that, okay? I'd also like you to try and use the il faut phrases and il ne faut pas from the beginning of the lesson, so that you're able to say something along the lines of, in my house, chez moi, we recycle glass and paper, because you must not throw it in the bin. Il ne faut pas jeter tous les déchets à la poubelle. So tell me why you do it, because you must save energy, because you must not do something. So use those il faut and il ne faut pas phrases. So you can either type your answer to me, or you can write it in your book, take a picture, whatever you prefer. This is the main thing I need to see from today's lesson, so that I can check that you're writing the present tense correctly and using the il faut and il ne faut pas phrases correctly. I'm just going to explain a couple of other activities that you can do. Now, we all work at different paces. Some of you are still possibly catching up from last week as well. So this is where I expect everybody to get to. But I'm going to show you some other activities you can do if you would like some further work and further revision of this topic. Okay, so you could also talk about the problems you think are the most serious, les plus graves, and the problems you think are the least serious about the environment. So I think the most serious problem is global warming, or I think the least serious problem is deforestation, whatever it is, and try and give some reasons why. So that's something you could add to your writing. And then one thing you could do for a bit of revision for yourself, just to see where you're at so far, is to get a load of scrap paper and fill each paper or sticky notes with a different word of the environment that you can think of. Can you cover your desk or your bed, wherever you work in? Or if you're working on one piece of paper, how far down the page can you get? And then we'll repeat this next week to see how much further you can get. Are you building your vocabulary, or are you forgetting words? Does your list get shorter? In which case we need to make sure that you're using things like Quizlet in between lessons to keep up the vocabulary. Then there are a few reading activities that I'd like you, if you have time or you want extra, you could try. So there is this document here that will be in the lesson, which is like a quiz. So you answer these questions and you need for each one to put 3 if it's always that you do it, 2 if it's sometimes, or 0 if it's never, okay? And it says for question 4, you count 1 point more for every material you recycle. So do you recycle? 3 points for always, and if you recycle glass, 1 point, paper 1 point, and so on. So read the questions, give yourself a point for how often you do the activity they're asking about, and then you can calculate your scores. As part of that reading, there's a find the vocabulary. So can you find the English for those? And that will help you. I'm just going to skip on. The answers are there if you do the reading and want to come and check it. Then there's a space in the reading for where you can put your answers, and then you get a total. And then I think I haven't put it on here, but it's on the sheet. It tells you for however many points you've gotten, how environmentally friendly you are. Then there's this grid here you can work across to create these sentences. You find you must in the first one, recycle in the next one, glass in the next one, and so on. And some of them, these ones are a bit more muddled because glass and plastic, because I can't put all of these in one column, they just, the end parts are muddled here. So you can make 6 sentences using these to practice vocabulary from the last couple of lessons. And then looking at some local problems, there's 21 phrases in English saying what people are like in terms of local environment, and that overlaps with the town topic if you want a bit of revision of town. So you write 1 to 21 and then write the letters that go with it. So like it's too noisy? Can you find what that is over here? You write the opposites like there, il y a trop de bruit. So 17 would be I, and so on. Okay. And then the answers are here if you want to check them. So I won't go through it so you don't see the answers there. So you don't have to complete all of those. Those are just extras. You might want to complete 1 or 2 of them. You can submit them to me, that's fine. I'd like it if everybody had a go at this challenge so that you can see in comparison how much vocabulary you've learned or forgotten next week. But everyone at least needs to complete as far as here and get that writing to me for me to check. Okay, super, well done Year 11, and I look forward to reading what you do for the environment.